Welcome to Trending Unpacked, the show where we unravel what everyone's talking about and hopefully provide you with the essential knowledge you need to be part of the conversation.
That's the plan.
Today, we are undertaking, well, a substantial analysis of a singular filmmaker whose work has quietly and I think profoundly shaped global cinema for decades, long before, the current moment of diversity mandates. We are talking about the celebrated director of modern global cinema, Mira Nair.
Indeed. And she really is a powerful cultural pioneer.
Yeah.
When you look at her body of work, her filmography, it's immediately clear that her storytelling is just dedicated to bridging worlds.
Right.
Her focus on identity, class, culture, it's delivered through these rich, incredibly human narratives, and she does it with an energy that is, well, entirely her own.
Our mission today, then, is to extract the essential knowledge from the sources we have on her work, understanding not just, what she made, but how she managed to redefine these narrative boundaries. Because the core of her appeal, it seems, is that she makes stories that matter deeply personal, yet somehow universally accessible.
That's the critical distinction, I think. What's fascinating here is that she didn't just sort of passively make films. She actively engineered a new cultural space.
Engineered, I like that.
Yeah, she has redefined how the West perceives the complex reality of South Asian life and the global diaspora. She really acts as one of the most vital cultural bridge builders working today.
And she manages this balance between critique and joy.
She manages to balance critique, joy, and this profound respect for her subjects. It's a combination very few artists actually master.
Okay, that sounds like quite a journey we need to unpack thoroughly. So let's start right at the foundation. Her early life, the core identity that seems to inform her whole cinematic voice.
Right. Well, if we look at the start of her career, the geography is everything. Mira Nair was born in India in 1957. And this origin, paired with her later education at Harvard and then her subsequent global career, that's the crucial cocktail, really, that created her signature artistic perspective.
Yeah.
She's not simply an Indian filmmaker or, a diasporic one. She is a filmmaker whose very existence kind of mirrors the migration and cross-cultural dialogue she explores in her art.
So she came to filmmaking with this sort of insider-outsider perspective, like a deep, inherited understanding of Indian society, but mixed with a Western education and this global lens.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And how did that translate into her earliest work?
Well, it translated into an immediate commitment to realism, often rooted in documentary styles.
Ah, she started in documentary.
She did. She began with nonfiction work, and that seems to have instilled in her this unique discipline. The camera had to find the truth, not fabricate it.
Right.
So this early life gave her a deep understanding of Indian society. The stark strata of class, the dense family dynamics, the often overlooked resilience, and frankly, beauty of daily life there.
When she moved into narrative features, she was just uniquely equipped to explore migration and cultural identity from that authentic, multi-layered perspective.
And this commitment to realism, to exploring these, let's say, unvarnished truths, it catapulted her into international recognition pretty quickly, didn't it, with her first major feature film?
It did, very quickly.
Let's maybe run through those milestones, starting with a film that still feels incredibly visceral decades later, Salaam Bombay, from 1988.
Salaam Bombay, yes. Look, this wasn't just a film. It was a statement about where she placed her focus. It was absolutely instrumental in establishing her commitment to a difficult, often uncompromising realism.
And the subject matter itself is tough.
Oh, incredibly. The lives of street children in Mumbai. It was raw, it was honest.
Yeah.
And to achieve that authenticity, she employed several, pretty unconventional techniques that really highlight her early pioneering spirit.
Can you give us some specifics on the production side? How did she ensure that raw authenticity got onto the screen?
Well, critically, she used non-professional actors. She drew many of the children directly from the streets of Mumbai.
Wow.
Yeah. And she ran workshops with them, not just for acting, but actually to allow them to articulate their own experiences and then incorporate those truths right into the script.
That sounds incredibly demanding.
It is. It requires immense patience, immense respect for the subjects. The film was shot on location, often guerrilla style, immersing the viewer entirely in this chaotic, dangerous, yet somehow vibrant world of urban poverty.
So a powerful cinematic decision then, prioritizing that lived experience over, say, polished acting. And the impact, it was immediate and global, wasn't it?
Absolutely immediate. The film was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film.
It is huge for a debut feature.
Huge. I mean, for an independent film focused on marginalized youth coming from India at that time,
Yeah.
that was seismic.
Yeah.
It basically announced to the world that Nair was a major directorial voice, one committed to exploring the harsh realities of urban poverty, but with dignity, refusing to frame them merely as spectacle or, pure tragedy.
Hmm.
That nomination didn't just secure her place. It established a baseline for her career.
Right.
Art that addresses serious social issues without sacrificing cinematic quality.
Okay, so if Salam Bombay established her technical and, I guess, ethical commitment to realism, then Monsoon Wedding in 2001, that feels like the moment of monumental success that really cemented her as a truly global, maybe even bankable force.
That's the perfect way to frame that transition, yeah. Monsoon Wedding achieved something quite extraordinary, winning the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival.
The Golden Lion, I mean, that's one of the absolute top prizes.
It really is. Think about the context. A film focused on a chaotic, multi-layered Punjabi family wedding, complete with secrets, contemporary anxieties, complicated relationships. That film took home that prize. It was a watershed moment. It put modern cosmopolitan Indian life squarely in the global spotlight.
And crucially, it did so by being accessible, right? Not esoteric or difficult. It essentially provided this sophisticated cinematic language for the global Indian experience that wasn't reliant on, say, established Bollywood formulas.
Exactly right. It proved that cultural specificity, when handled authentically, actually enhances universality rather than detracting from it.
Interesting.
Monsoon Wedding managed to blend the structure of a romantic comedy, the rush to the altar, with some pretty heavy social drama, dealing frankly with themes like sexual abuse, financial strain, all lurking beneath this facade of opulence.
Mm-hmm.
And its commercial success, achieved outside the Hollywood or major Indian studio system, that really paved the way for her to tackle even broader international subjects later on.
And that expansive scope is fully visible in her later works, isn't it? It demonstrates her thematic and geographic flexibility. She seems to be constantly moving across continents and cultures, yet somehow maintaining that central thread.
Definitely. We see that bridge building continuing with films like The Namesake. That was 2006, based on the Jhumpa Lahiri novel.
Oh, great book.
Fantastic book. And the film offered this deeply nuanced exploration of the immigrant experience, specifically that second-generation struggle in the U.S. to reconcile inherited culture with adopted identity.
Yeah.
Then she takes quite a turn geographically to the African continent with Queen of Katwe from 2016.
Right, focusing on the young chess prodigy in Uganda.
Exactly. A young female chess prodigy from the slums of Uganda.
Queen of Katwe in particular feels like a pure example of her directorial philosophy, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Taking this inspiring story, but grounding it so firmly in the harsh realities of a place like Katwe.
It absolutely does. It shows her relentless commitment to filming on location using local actors, ensuring the environment itself is a character in the film.
Mm-hmm.
The film doesn't romanticize poverty at all, but it absolutely celebrates the human spirit and the strategic intellect that can flourish even under, pretty impossible circumstances.
Yeah.
So this constant movement across continents, Mumbai, Manhattan, Kampala, it just highlights her singular thematic consistency.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize those common threads then. Across these incredibly diverse projects, what is the through line that really defines the Mira Nair filmography?
Well, if you look closely, the focus never really wavers from a few key things. Cultural identity, definitely. The mechanics of migration, how that works and feels. The stark dynamics of class, always present. And, perhaps most uniquely, finding this intrinsic, everyday beauty of life, particularly the lives of those on the margins globally.
Right.
But how she does it is maybe the most important part.
And the sources really emphasize this point, her pioneering role in South Asian representation. It wasn't just that she made films about Indian characters, it's that she changed the very cinematic grammar of how they were perceived globally.
This is truly the core of her legacy, certainly in this foundational stage of her career. She was instrumental, absolutely instrumental, in shaping South Asian representation in Western cinema by explicitly and forcefully refusing to reduce her characters to stereotypes.
Which was the norm before, largely.
Oh, definitely. Before her, the dominant Western narratives about the subcontinent often fell into one of two traps. Either it was poverty tourism, focusing solely on squalor without dignity,
right,
or it was spiritual exoticism, the idea that every Indian character was some kind of guru or mystical guide.
Yeah, nuance was essentially erased for the sake of these easily digestible Western tropes.
Exactly. And Nair provided this authentic counter-narrative by showing economic, social, psychological diversity. She insisted on complexity, on contradiction, on the full humanity for her subjects, regardless of their background or class. She showed, for example, that Indian families could be wealthy, dysfunctional, modern, traditional, struggling with universal human problems, all at the same time, all contained within the frame of a single wedding in Monsoon Wedding.
Right.
This act of just insisting on complexity was in itself a profound political statement, and I think a foundational moment for pretty much every diaspora filmmaker who followed her.
She introduced a level of psychological depth where previously there had often only been caricature. That takes us perfectly into the analysis of her artistry, the cultural impact, and her truly distinct stylistic signature.
Yeah, and when we try to define her unique artistic approach, critics often settled on this descriptor, joyful realism.
Joyful realism.
And as we discussed earlier, it sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How do you maintain deep social critique while simultaneously infusing the work with celebration and vibrancy?
That's where her genius seems to manifest, maybe in the visual language. Let's truly unpack this concept of joyful realism for you listening. It's not simply realism in that, European gritty sense. It's realism that refuses to exclude the possibility of joy, music, saturated color, even amid profound difficulty.
Right. She uses color and sound almost as an emotional anchor in the films. Think of Monsoon Wedding again. She immerses you in the vibrant chaos, the marigolds, the deep reds, the intricate traditional fabrics, and she blends that celebratory visual aesthetic with this raw, often handheld camera work that feels immediate and almost documentary-like.
Yeah, you feel like you're in it.
Exactly. And the music and the dance are not just background. They are a necessary release valve, allowing characters to process emotions that maybe the dialogue cannot fully contain.
But this celebration isn't pure escapism, is it? You're saying she masterfully makes that color and music coexist seamlessly with deep social critique, forcing the audience to hold two truths at once.
Precisely. You see the vibrant energy of the wedding celebrations, but through the exact same lens, you witness the quiet desperation of a patriarch struggling with debt or the painful memory of assault emerging. Her characters are human.
Flawed.
Completely flawed. They harbor prejudices. They struggle with their finances, but their lives are never diminished. This blending prevents her films from collapsing into either, say, heavy-handed social commentary or just pure, uncritical, escapist fantasy. She gives us both the party and the inherent human drama underneath it all.
That's a fascinating synthesis. But I wonder, doesn't the very exuberance of joyful realism sometimes risk undermining the seriousness of the critique? Like, if the visuals are too beautiful or the music too inviting, does the political message become less sharp than, say, a purely stark, dark drama might be?
That's a profoundly critical question, and it's absolutely a tightrope Nair walks every single time.
Yeah.
The sources seem to suggest, though, that she believes the emotional connection achieved through warmth and joy is actually more powerful in the long run than a cold, purely intellectual critique.
Interesting approach.
For her, the aesthetic pleasure is the invitation. Once the audience is invested in the character's happiness, their wedding, their success, whatever it is, they become more vulnerable, more open to the pain and the social problems those characters face. It's almost like a bait and switch. You come for the color, you stay for the truth. Her films achieve empathy first, before they deliver the message.
And the most potent example of this and its commercial and cultural power, it really does remain Monsoon Wedding. That film truly broke global barriers, demonstrating that this specific blend works, well, everywhere.
Its success was absolutely transformative because it wasn't just a critical darling, it was a massive, global, independent box office hit.
Right.
This provided undeniable proof of concept. And if we look at why it succeeded culturally on that scale, it seems it was because it initiated this crucial shift in perspective for international audiences.
What was the specific shift you're talking about?
It portrayed modern, cosmopolitan, middle and upper class Indian family life without feeling the need to constantly explain Indian culture to an outsider.
Okay. It didn't hold your hand.
Exactly. It assumed a degree of cultural literacy, or failing that, it demanded the audience lean in and pay attention, rather than having everything kind of sanitized for easy consumption.
Yeah.
The film was entirely confident in its own language, its own cultural context, inviting the international viewer directly into a family drama that felt immediate, recognizable, and yet deeply specific.
And that focus on specificity is directly tied to this idea of bridging East and West, isn't it?
Absolutely. Her films constantly explore the hybrid identities of the global Indian diaspora. She's telling stories of people who live physically in one place, London, New York, Delhi, but whose emotional, familial, cultural roots stretch back across generations and continents.
Right.
She makes those complex, hyphenated cultural lives that struggle between tradition and aggressive modernity relatable. This normalization of cultural duality is perhaps her greatest artistic contribution.
Let's delve deeper just for a second into cultural duality. For someone listening who might not be familiar with that specific experience, how does she articulate that on screen? What does it look like?
Okay, well, take The Struggle in the Namesake. It's essentially a story about a son who changes his Indian name, Gogol, to something more anglicized, Nikhil, attempting to shed what he sees as the burden of his parents' immigrant history. Nair shows the profound disconnect. The parents are still living partly in India mentally, upholding traditions that feel suffocating or just nonsensical to the son who only knows American culture. She uses things like food, music, even the architecture of their homes to illustrate this duality. The Indian home in the U.S. might look American on the outside, but the smells and sounds inside are irrevocably Bengali.
I see.
By focusing on the emotional pain of that disconnect, she transforms a specific diasporic anxiety into a really universal story about parental expectation and finding yourself.
So she sets the standard for representation not just by featuring diverse characters, but by allowing them to be fully three-dimensional, complicated people whose cultural duality is a source of strength and narrative richness, not a cultural defect or some kind of burden.
That is the legacy she forged. Prior to Nair, as we've noted, non-Western narratives were often flattened or framed solely through the lens of external Western perception. She normalized cultural duality. She showed that global stories of migration, of belonging, of navigating two worlds, can be both deeply personal, rooted in specific traditions, and universally resonant in their emotional truth.
Yeah.
That shift is profoundly important for every filmmaker who has come after her dealing with similar themes, whether they are focused on Asian, Latin American, or African diasporas.
It's a remarkable track record of not only making history, but also shaping the future of global cinema. And what's particularly interesting, I think, is that while we've been discussing her immense historical impact, she is very much a figure in the present tense. Why is she trending so strongly right now in, the 2025 context?
Right, it's a great question. The sources indicate that we are witnessing this perfect confluence of factors leading to a major cultural rediscovery or maybe reinforcement of her work. Firstly, there is the traditional driver of enduring influence. Academic and institutional appreciation tied to specific dates, specific anniversaries.
Right. The cycle of appreciation, a milestone passes, and suddenly critics and festivals are reevaluating the film's place in history.
Exactly. We've seen key anniversaries, particularly for Monsoon Wedding, that have prompted major film festivals and institutions, like recent retrospectives at Lincoln Center or releases by the Criterion Collection in the U.S., to revisit her entire body of work.
Right.
This academic reevaluation brings critical attention and conversation back into the zeitgeist.
But that, again, primarily targets, cinephiles and critics.
Yeah.
It doesn't fully explain why a much broader, maybe younger and non-academic audience seems to be engaging with her work now.
That's where the technological revolution really steps in, specifically the profound streaming effect. We are seeing a near-complete digitization and global availability of her filmography, often for the first time.
This is massive, isn't it? Because for decades, if you wanted to see, say, Salaam Bombay or Mississippi Masala, you often had to hunt down specific imports or wait for a specialized screening somewhere.
Precisely. Now, her entire career is becoming accessible on demand. Streaming services like Netflix have acquired rights to some of her most popular works, providing mass exposure.
Okay.
And crucially, these curated platforms like the Criterion Channel and MUBI have added her filmography, often with restored prints and critical essays. This availability serves two functions: mass appeal through Netflix, and that sort of academic validation through Criterion.
It's essentially a second career renaissance driven almost entirely by platform accessibility. A student in London or a casual viewer in Sao Paulo can, literally tonight, watch her entire artistic evolution.
It democratizes access to her artistry in a way that simply wasn't possible even 5-10 years ago. This exposure to millions of new, younger audiences globally is profoundly important. It allows a new generation currently grappling with issues of identity and authenticity to discover this foundational filmmaker who tackled these issues decades ago.
And that takes us directly to the third factor you mentioned, cultural momentum. The themes she pioneered are now absolutely central to modern industry conversations.
Absolutely. The current global discussions around authentic representation in cinema, who gets to tell which stories, how complex those portrayals are, the industry's historical exclusion of marginalized voices, have naturally circled back to highlight her pioneering role.
She becomes a touchstone, doesn't she? A historical reference point that validates current efforts.
Exactly. She is cited as the proof that these nuanced, authentic, non-stereotypical stories not only deserve to be told, but can also achieve massive commercial and critical success without relying on standard studio formulas. She is relevant not just as a historical figure, but as a crucial political and cultural architect of the modern filmmaking landscape we're in now.
And the attention is only likely to grow because she continues to be active, with strong future anticipation swirling around her next moves.
That's the final piece of the puzzle, really. The sources hint at rumors of a new major project, and the potential subject matter signals her continued global focus, moving beyond maybe the traditional diasporas we've seen before.
Okay, tell us more about this rumored project. What's the buzz?
Well, it's described as exploring India-Africa connections. Think about the significance of that for a moment. It's connecting two massive, often siloed parts of the global south,
Interesting.
creating a narrative bridge that bypasses the typical east-to-west migration route we often see depicted. Having already successfully explored Uganda in Queen of Katwe, this new focus would further emphasize her commitment to these transcontinental narratives that examine identity outside of the typical Western gaze.
It shows that her mission exploring identity and culture in this comprehensive global way is far from complete. Okay, let's pivot slightly now from her artistic style to her commitment to mentorship and political consciousness. Because she's not just a director, she's an advocate, an educator, an institutional builder.
Yeah, this transition is absolutely key because her entire career is evidence that art and activism don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
In fact, they can be mutually reinforcing. Her directorial style, that joyful realism we talked about, is inherently a political act in some ways.
How so?
Well, it combines intense political consciousness with this visual warmth, a difficult balance few filmmakers really achieve.
Right. Often films that seek to deliver a sharp political message can feel quite cold, maybe even overly didactic, focusing solely on the pain or the problem. Her films feel warm, vibrant, alive, even when dealing with immense hardship.
And that warmth, I think, is the Trojan horse for political engagement. It ensures the message lands emotionally, not just intellectually. And her dedication to activism isn't abstract. It's manifested in concrete, long-standing institutional efforts that address structural inequalities in filmmaking. We absolutely must talk about the Misha Film Lab.
Misha Film Lab, yes.
Yeah.
This is perhaps her most significant institutional legacy outside of her own filmography, right?
Right.
Where is it based, and what is its fundamental mission?
Okay, so Maisha, which means life in Swahili, was founded by Nair in Uganda, but it serves a much broader purpose. Its mission is explicit: to actively train emerging filmmakers from East Africa and South Asia.
Okay.
This endeavor goes far beyond mere mentorship. It is an active effort in cultural exchange, skills transfer, and capacity building in regions that have historically lacked the necessary infrastructure to support local independent filmmaking.
That focus on infrastructure feels critical. She's not just giving advice, she's helping to build an entire independent film ecosystem. How does the Misha Lab specifically operate? What do they do?
The structure is intensive and very hands-on. They run highly specialized workshops focusing on screenwriting, directing, cinematography, editing. The core philosophy is really about providing world-class training without requiring young filmmakers to leave their home context.
Right, keeping it local.
Exactly. They are mentored by established international figures, but the central tenet always remains: tell your own story in your own voice. The goal is to cultivate a film industry where local stories, authentically told, can compete globally.
So she is directly challenging that historical dynamic where stories from these regions were often told by Western filmmakers who kind of flew in, observed, and then left. She's ensuring control of the narrative stays local.
Precisely. This institutional effort reflects her profound belief in cinema as a tool for social change and, importantly, economic empowerment. By providing resources and training to young filmmakers in regions often overlooked by Western film academies and funding bodies, she is ensuring that cultural narratives are controlled and articulated by the people who live those experiences. It fosters true economic and creative self-determination.
And that aligns directly with her direct, powerful advocacy for women and minority filmmakers across the board. There's a specific guiding principle she often states that seems to summarize her entire life's work in this area, doesn't it?
Yes, she has consistently stated this, and this is the quote that I think every learner should carry forward. If we don't tell our own stories, no one else will.
Powerful.
That statement isn't just a passive observation. It is an empowering mandate. It frames her entire career, and especially her mentorship, as a necessity born out of historical narrative erasure. It pushes women and minority filmmakers to actively seize the narrative control that has historically been denied to them.
It's empowering because it places the responsibility and the power firmly in the hands of the storytellers themselves. And this fierce commitment to vision and authenticity seems reinforced through her collaborative style as well, which has been remarkably consistent over the years, contributing to that instantly recognizable visual and emotional language in her films.
Consistency and collaboration is absolutely vital, especially for a director who crosses genres and continents as frequently as she does. It helps maintain a cohesive artistic vision despite changing backdrops. And we see this with two key artistic partners in particular. First, her cinematographer, Declan Quinn.
Okay, Declan Quinn. How does he specifically contribute to that joyful realism we discussed earlier? What does his work look like?
Quinn has worked with her on several defining films, And he is just a master of blending that fluid, almost documentary style with rich, almost painterly color.
Right.
In films like Monsoon Wedding and Mississippi Masala, he frequently uses these fluid handheld cameras to capture the chaos and intimacy of family gatherings, making the audience feel really present in the room.
Yeah.
Yet he simultaneously harnesses natural light and deep color saturation, those vibrant yellows and reds we remember, to elevate the environment beyond mere realism to something celebratory. He finds the beauty in the chaos, visually.
And then there is the soundscape, defined so often by her collaboration with the legendary composer A.R. Rahman.
Oh yes, Ramlan's involvement is absolutely integral to bridging the East and West in her films. His music, which is itself a fusion of traditional Indian classical motifs, like the delicate rhythms of the tabla with contemporary orchestral, jazz, even pop elements, it just perfectly complements Nair's narrative goal of cultural hybridity.
Can you give an example?
Sure. In The Namesake, Rahman's score subtly underscores the protagonist's emotional split. He uses traditional Indian sounds to represent the inherited longing of the parents, and then integrates Western orchestral swells for the modern struggles of the son. This consistency in sound ensures her films maintain this cohesive emotional language that somehow speaks universally.
This entire conversation seems to circle back to her influence, doesn't it? She didn't just break barriers. She seems to have laid the bricks for the road that many subsequent global filmmakers are currently traveling, particularly those focused on these hyphenated identities.
Her enduring legacy is enormous, and it's measurable. She continues to be celebrated at international film festivals, academic retrospectives, which keeps her work in conversation with new artistic movements. But you see her influence most clearly, most tangibly, in the current generation of directors who actively cite her as a foundational touchstone.
And we're talking about incredibly important contemporary voices here, people who have achieved massive global acclaim themselves.
Absolutely. Directors such as Lulu Wang, who brought us the critically acclaimed The Farewell,
Love that film.
and Chloe Zhao, the Oscar-winning director of Nomadland, both draw profound inspiration from Nair's approach to authenticity and character.
If you look at their films, you really can see the direct echo of Nair's style of finding the universal within the highly specific, can't
Oh, definitely. Take Lulu Wang's work. In The Farewell, she explores the very specific, complex, familial negotiations between the East, China, and the West, America, balancing often absurd humor with profound sadness over cultural disconnect. It's a perfect modern interpretation of joyful realism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Similarly, Chloe Zhao, particularly in her earlier works like The Writer, focused on marginalized communities with this deep, respectful realism and incredible warmth, refusing to judge or stereotype her subjects. Nair's ability to normalize cultural specificity and complexity really paved the way for those directors to achieve their own critical successes by insisting that their stories didn't need translation or external validation.
So what does this all mean for you listening today? What is the core takeaway we should extract from this intense analysis of the global story of Mira Nair?
Look, I think the central lesson of her career is both profound and actionable. Her legacy really lies in the normalization of cultural duality. She demonstrated definitively that deeply personal, culturally specific stories that might seem niche or localized on the surface, are in fact the most universal stories imaginable.
Because they tap into fundamental human experiences.
Exactly. By focusing on the intrinsic human struggle with class,
Yeah.
identity, love, family dynamics, she proved that complexity sells and authenticity not only triumphs over stereotype, but also creates a lasting, economically viable filmography.
She basically gave global storytellers permission to be complicated, loud, and specific on screen without fear of alienating a mainstream audience.
That's it, exactly. She insisted that you don't have to dilute or water down your experience to be understood. You just have to present it truthfully and with unwavering respect. And that insistence, well, it transformed global cinema.
That is a tremendous note to end on. But before we wrap up, let's leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought to chew on. We've spent a significant amount of time analyzing her pioneering style of joyful realism. We encourage you to maybe explore that concept in contemporary cinema. Are today's blockbuster filmmakers succeeding at combining necessary social critique with genuine warmth and celebration? Or are the constraints of modern commercial filmmaking perhaps pushing us back towards simplified narratives?
It's a good question.
And perhaps more relevant to her current resurgence. While the rise of streaming platforms has certainly democratized access to her work, is it truly democratizing the voices she championed decades ago? Is it funding and promoting new, independent, non-Western talent, or is it simply commodifying her successful formula for the global content mill?
A critical question regarding the economics of authenticity that we absolutely must continue to ask.
Indeed. Well, we appreciate you joining us for this in-depth analysis of Mira Nair's artistry and monumental resurgence.
Thank you for sharing this incredible cinematic journey with us today.
Next time on Trending Unpacked, the Northern Lights Why 2025 is shaping up to be the brightest season yet for skywatchers and scientists alike. Join us then.